France, the place of music, romance, and divine baguette. I mean, delicious food. You might have guessed it, but we're closing in on patch 4.0 and the next journey we will be taking in Genshin Impact. To the land of the Hydro Archon and Fontaine. Fontaine, fountain, you get the idea. Music has always been an integral part of all cultures, and that is also the case for French music. Whether it's chanson, musette, opera, ballet, or folk music, it is the lifeblood of French culture. You most likely have heard of the famous La Vie en Rose, sung by Edith Piaf. But did you know there is a long-standing practice of taking poetry and setting it to music? We can't forget profound works of poetry written by Charles Baudelaire, like Les Fleurs du Mal, Duparc, and Debussy, borrowed from his works and words during their careers. We can't forget famous operatic and symphonic composers, like Charles Gounod and Georges Bizet, both of whom wrote a slew of operas, though most famously perhaps being Faust and Carmen, respectively. Each of these operas are approached in the traditional French grand opera fashion, featuring large choruses, ballet sequences, and long run times. Nor can we pass by melodie composers like Fauré, Lily Boulanger, Jean-Baptiste Lully, César Franck, and Maurice Ravel, to just mention a few. It goes without saying that one of the sounds that reminds us generally of French music is, of course, the accordion. The accordion was brought to France by Italian immigrants who merged with Auvergnats that moved to Paris from the Auvergne region in France. Together, they played their musettes, not to be confused with Musette's Waltz from La Bohème. So how does this all relate to Fontaine and the music we are likely to hear while traveling this majestic cityscape of aqueducts, waterways, and the home of art, music, and culture of Teyvat? The rumors circling around have always been that Fontaine would be a steampunk version of France during the Belle Epoque time period. More or less the perfect setting, really. According to Wikipedia, the Belle Epoque time period was a period of time between 1871 and the outbreak of World War I in 1914 that was accompanied by optimism, peace, financial and economic prosperity, expansion, and technological, scientific, and cultural innovations. In this era of France's cultural and artistic climate, the arts markedly flourished, and numerous masterpieces of literature, music, theater, and visual art gained extensive recognition. That leads us to the teaser trailer for 4.0. Right away, we hear a classic soundscape of accordion, upright bass, and clarinet, which we often hear when we think of French salon music.
She's considered to be one of the most diligent in her duties, even among her kin.
Music is placid with a lightweight rhythmic lilt. It paints a picture of a warm summer day. We even hear a mandolin and a flute in the response to the original melody.
What she lacks in size, she makes up for in her sense of justice.
A nice classic resolution back to the tonic, the first note or home note, and the flute and accordion together. Eventually, we get a new soundscape, with strings and classic Hoyo mix style of using traditional instruments with full orchestra, never losing the feeling of playfulness and joy. This music is as vibrant as the blue water.
Or anything suspicious occurs, the just little Melusine will never act without authorization.
It is an interesting thing because this fits exactly with the way Hoyo mix approaches the other regions of this game. In every other region after Mondstadt, we've had traditional instrumentation mixed with standard Western orchestral writing, and I do believe that in the case of Fontaine, it will be no different. The thing about this particular teaser is that it doesn't actually showcase very much at all when it comes to music to be expected in Fontaine. A bubbly, bouncy, underwatery type of sound carries us a bit, but is pretty limiting when you consider the depth of French melodie, chanson, waltz, salon, and folk music. Did you know that Clair de Lune, arguably one of Debussy's most famous pieces, was written in 1890 and published in 1905? Please let there be a modern rendition of Clair de Lune and Fontaine. I would be so thrilled. Did you know The Flower Duet from Lakmé, an opera written by Léo Delibes, was composed in 1883? One of the most glorious pieces of classical music ever written? Please let there be opera in Fontaine. The famous Moulin Rouge in Paris opened in 1889. Please let there be dancing and ballet in Fontaine. The Belle Epoque was a culturally vivacious movement in French history, and I hope to see all of its splendor come forth in Fontaine. My hope for Fontaine, of course, is a true expression of European life in a time period before the world was split apart, though I believe ultimately it will be a reflection of life in Europe from the late 1800s into the mid-1920s, when life was grand and full. We've already seen conductors and musicians like Dvorak, Charlotte, the Steamboat journalist, Linné and Lynette, who appear straight out of Cabaret, a 1966 musical. I'm really excited, and I hope you are too.